The begging alien child. It was a quiet evening when Jack finished work and walked home through the empty streets of the town. The sky was dark, full of clouds, and the streetlights flickered softly. He carried a small bag of groceries in one hand, thinking only about his dinner. But then he heard something. At first, it was faint, like a whisper carried by the wind. "Please, adopt my mom. She makes the best food." Jack stopped walking. He looked around but saw no one. The street was silent except for the distant sound of a dog barking. Then he heard it again, closer this time. "Please, adopt my mom. She makes the best food. Please." He turned toward the narrow alley between two buildings. There, in the shadows, stood a small figure. It was a child. At least, it looked like a child, but not quite. The figure was short, wearing something like a gray robe, and its big round eyes glowed faintly blue in the dark. Its skin was pale and smooth, with a faint shimmer, and its head was just a little too big for its thin body. Jack's breath caught in his throat. "What are you?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The child stepped closer. Its feet made no sound on the ground. It tilted its head and looked up at him with those bright, glowing eyes. I am nobody, but I need help," the child said. "Please, adopt my mom. She makes the best food. I beg you." Jack stared at it. "Your mom?" he asked slowly. "Yes, my mom. She is human, like you, but they took her away. She cooks for them now, and if I don't find someone to help, they will take her forever." The child's voice trembled now, and Jack could see it clutching the edge of its robe, as if trying to hold itself together. Jack shook his head, trying to make sense of it all. "What are you talking about? Who are they? And why me?" Before the child could answer, a sudden movement in the corner of his eye made Jack turn. Shadows. Dark. Tall figures moved at the far end of the alley. They were shaped like men, but their limbs were longer, their heads narrow and sharp, and their eyes glowed red like embers. The child gasped and quickly hid behind Jack, grabbing the edge of his jacket. "Please, don't let them take me. If they take me, they will take my mom too. Please." Jack could feel the child's small hands shaking. The shadows drew closer. There were 3 of them, and they moved without making a sound, their long arms reaching toward the child. Jack's heart raced. He didn't understand what was happening, but something inside him, something human, told him to protect the child. "Stay behind me," he said firmly. The tallest shadow stopped just a few feet away, its red eyes fixed on Jack. It raised one long finger and pointed at the child. "That one does not belong here," it hissed, its voice like dry leaves. "Give it to us." Double quotes. Jack stood his ground. "No." The shadow tilted its head slowly. "You do not understand. You cannot protect it. Then you'll have to try and take him from me," Jack replied, surprising himself. There was silence. Then the shadows began to move closer again. The child suddenly tugged at Jack's sleeve and whispered, "We have to go. Now, follow me." Before Jack could respond, the child darted toward the back of the alley. Jack didn't think, he just ran after it. Behind them, he heard a strange, sharp sound like glass cracking, and the shadows moved faster. The child reached the wall at the end of the alley and pressed its small hand against the bricks. To Jack's shock, the wall shimmered like water and opened into a glowing blue doorway. "Come on," the child cried, already stepping through. Jack hesitated for half a second, then heard the hiss of the shadows right behind him. He didn't look back. He leapt through the doorway. On the other side, the air was different, warmer, filled with strange smells and colors. Jack stumbled to a stop, looking around in disbelief. They were standing in a vast, underground city. Strange creatures walked through glowing streets. Tall, crooked towers rose in the distance. Strange signs floated in the air, and small lights danced above the rooftops. Jack turned to the child, who was catching his breath. "What is this place?" Jack asked, his voice low with awe. The child looked up at him, eyes wide and sad. "This is where my mom is," it said quietly. "She is the only human here, and they won't let her go. You have to help me save her, because her food is the only thing keeping them alive." Jack stared at the child, his mind racing with questions. "Why me?" he finally asked. The child gave a faint smile. "Because you smell like kindness," it said. Behind them, the blue doorway flickered and disappeared, leaving Jack and the child alone in the strange city, with shadows still lurking somewhere in the dark. Asterisk. The hidden truth. Jack stood still. For a moment, trying to catch his breath. Behind him, the shimmering blue doorway faded completely, leaving nothing but a tall stone wall. The strange underground city stretched out before him, a maze of glowing streets and alien towers, with colors he couldn't even name. He glanced down at the child, who was already pulling at his sleeve. "We have to move," the child said urgently. "The hunters will not stop. They can smell us here too." "Hunters?" Jack asked, but the child was already walking fast. Jack followed. The streets were full of creatures, tall ones with glassy heads, tiny ones floating in the air, creatures that looked like plants but moved like people. They all seemed busy with their own lives, and yet many of them paused to look at Jack as he passed. Is this under earth?" Jack whispered. The child didn't look back. "Yes and no. This place is under many worlds at the same time. But it is dying now. That is why they took her." "Who is they?" "Why, your mom. What's really going on here?" The child stopped suddenly and turned to face him. "You really don't understand yet," it said softly, its blue eyes glowing brighter. "Now, but you will." The child led him into a narrow tunnel that spiraled down. The walls glowed faintly, covered with moving symbols that Jack could not read. The air grew warmer and heavier as they descended. Finally, they reached a hidden chamber. Quiet, lit by soft golden light, the child sat on a low stone bench and motioned for Jack to sit too. "You want to know why my mom is here?" Jack nodded. The child lowered its voice. "Long ago," it began, "this city was alive. It was full of light and power. But then it started to fade. No one knew why. Our leaders tried everything: magic, machines, even stealing light from other worlds. But nothing worked. Then one day, a human woman came here. She cooked food for herself, simple human food. But when the creatures tasted it, they grew strong again. The lights brightened. The city healed a little. Her food, it woke something inside everyone." Jack stared at the child, unsure whether to believe it. "Food?" he said slowly. "Just food?" "Not just food," the child whispered. "Human food is alive. It carries warmth, memory, something no creature here can create. They called it the gift, but instead of asking, they took her, and they made her cook for them every day. They keep her locked in the royal kitchens. She is the only human here, the only one who can save the city, and they will never let her leave." Jack's stomach tightened. "But if she's saving them, why does she need help? Why not just stay?" The child's face darkened. "Because they are killing her. Every dish she makes takes something from her. She grows weaker and weaker. They don't care. They will use her until she is gone. And when she dies, the city dies too." Jack sat in silence, trying to process everything. Then he asked quietly, "And what about you? If she is your mom, why are you like this?" The child hesitated. "I was born here," it said finally. I am half human, half them, but they do not accept me. I escaped to find someone who would help, someone who smells of kindness. That is you." Jack didn't know what to say, Doc, just then. A strange sound echoed through the tunnel. A sharp, clicking noise, growing louder, the child's eyes widened in fear. "They found us," it whispered. Jack jumped to his feet. "What do we do?" The child stood too. "Follow me. We cannot go to her yet. It's too dangerous. But there is someone who can help us prepare. A friend of hers. He lives in the market of Echoes." "Who is he?" Jack asked, already following as the child led him deeper into the tunnels. "He was her first customer," the child said, almost smiling. "The one who tasted her food before anyone else. They call him the Eater of Memories." The clicking grew louder behind them, now joined by strange whispers. The air turned colder. Child stopped at another wall and pressed its hand against it. The wall split open, revealing another passage, narrower this time, lined with mirrors. They stepped through, and the wall closed behind them. Inside, Jack saw strange reflections of himself, hundreds of Jacks staring back at him, each one slightly different. One had red eyes, one had no mouth. One looked old and tired. He felt dizzy. "Don't look too long," the child warned. "This is the Hall of Mirrors. It shows what could be, or what you fear." Jack forced his eyes forward. Finally, they emerged into a vast cavern filled with noise and color. The Market of Echoes lined the streets, selling impossible things. Jars of light, bottles full of laughter, cages holding tiny stars. Strange music floated through the air. Voices overlapped in dozens of languages, some that Jack could not even hear properly. The child walked quickly through the crowd, and Jack stayed close behind. At the far end of the market stood a tall figure in a black cloak, its face hidden. It sat at a table covered with empty plates. The child approached it and whispered, "We need your help." The figure slowly raised its head, revealing eyes like deep wells of darkness. "I know," the figure said in a soft, cold voice. "I have been waiting." Jack shivered as the figure gestured to an empty chair at the table. "Sit," it said, "if you wish. To save her, you must know what you are truly fighting against, and you must be willing to pay the price." Jack looked at the child, who only nodded. Taking a deep breath, Jack sat down, and the figure placed a small silver plate in front of him, with something written on it in glowing letters he could not read. The figure smiled faintly and whispered, "Eat, and you will see the truth." Jack reached for the plate, his hand trembling, as the whispers of the hunters echoed faintly behind them, growing closer. Asterisk, the alien feast. Jack stared at the silver plate in front of him. On its surface, glowing, letters shifted like living creatures, curling and fading before he could even try to read them. The figure in the black cloak sat silently across the table, its dark eyes fixed on him. The child stood behind Jack, clutching his sleeve tightly. "You must eat," the figure said softly. "Only then will you see what she sees. Only then will you know what she carries." Jack swallowed hard. The air in the Market of Echoes was thick and heavy, full of strange smells, spices, smoke, and something bitter. The noise of the crowd around them faded, leaving only the sound of his own heartbeat. With a deep breath, he picked up the plate. The letters on it flashed brightly, and then dissolved into a thin, shimmering liquid. "Drink," the figure whispered. Jack raised the plate to his lips. The liquid was warm and salty, tasting faintly of honey and ash. As soon as it touched his tongue, the world around him shattered. Everything went dark. Then he was standing in a kitchen, but not just any kitchen. This one stretched as far as he could see. The walls were alive with faint golden light. Ovens and stoves lined the space, and dozens of alien servants moved quickly, carrying dishes to and fro. In the center stood her, the child's mother. She was human, her hair streaked with gray, her hands moving fast as she kneaded dough and stirred steaming oats. She looked tired, no more than tired, hollow, as if each dish she prepared drained another piece of her away, but her eyes still held something. Warmth, love, determination. Jack tried to step forward, but he couldn't move. He was only watching. The kitchen doors opened, and creatures in golden robes entered, tall, regal, with crowns of twisted metal. The alien king stood at the front, his skin dark like stone, his eyes burning like coals. More, the king demanded. Cook. More. The woman nodded silently and turned back to her work. Jack felt a sharp pain in his chest as he watched. With each dish she placed on the king's table, the light in her faded a little more. She feeds the city with her soul, came the whisper of the figure in his ear. Jack jumped. He was back in the market, sitting at the table again, sweating and gasping. The figure leaned closer. And if you do nothing, she will die, and the city will feast on her until there is nothing left. Jack clenched his fists. Then tell me how to stop it. The figure tilted its head slightly. You must get to her before the great feast, tomorrow night, when the whole city gathers to take their share of her. After that, she cannot be saved. Jack nodded grimly. How do I reach her? The palace is full of guards. The figure slid something across the table, a small coin, black and cold to the touch. This will take you through the hidden gate. But once you enter, the palace itself will try to break you. You will see things meant to stop you, and the hunters will follow. Jack pocketed the coin. I don't care. I'm getting her out. The figure chuckled faintly. Bold words. I hope you can keep them. Then it vanished, melting into the air like smoke. Jack stood up and turned to the child. We leave now. The child nodded, its eyes shining with hope and fear. They hurried out of the market, weaving through the crowd, moving toward the outer edge of the city. Above them, strange bells began to ring, long, deep notes that made the ground vibrate. What's that? Jack asked. The announcement, the child said softly. They are calling the city to the feast, tomorrow night. They are getting ready. By the time they reached the hidden gate, a cracked stone arch covered in vines, the bells had stopped. The child pressed its small hand against the stone, and a faint circle of light appeared. Jack took out the black coin and placed it into the circle. The gate shimmered, and a narrow, dark passage opened before them. The child glanced at him. Once we go through, there is no coming back until it's done. I'm ready, Jack said. They stepped through together, on the other side was darkness and silence. The passage was long and narrow, the walls slick and cold. Faint whispers came from the stones, calling his name, trying to make him turn back. Jack kept moving. At the end of the passage, they emerged into a massive hall, the royal kitchens, but it was empty now, silent except for the faint clatter of pots in the distance. Jack single quotes as heart raced. Where is she? He whispered. She will be in the grand hall, the child said. That is where the feast begins. But we are not alone. From the shadows at the edges of the kitchen, shapes began to move, long-limbed hunters with red eyes. Stepping closer, their claws scraping the floor. Jack grabbed a heavy iron ladle from a nearby counter and held it tight. Stay behind me, he told the child. The hunters hissed, circling them. Then, from the far end of the kitchen, a door opened, and golden light spilled into the room. Jack could see her now, the woman, standing at the entrance to the grand hall, carrying a large tray of steaming bread. She froze when she saw him. Her eyes widened, and her lips parted as if to speak, But before she could, the hunters lunged toward Jack and the child. "Go!" the child shouted. "I'll distract them. Find her." Jack didn't think. He swung the ladle hard at the nearest hunter and ran toward the golden door, the sound of claws and screams behind him. He burst through the door and into the grand hall and froze. Of creatures sat at a massive table, their glowing eyes fixed on him. The woman stood at the far end, still holding her tray, her face pale with shock. The alien king rose from his throne at the head of the table, his crown glinting in the golden light. "You dare enter my feast?" the king said, his voice deep and cold. Jack took a breath, tightened his grip on the ladle, and stepped forward. "I'm here for her," he said. The entire hall fell silent, the king's burning eyes locking on Jack as the feast began. The planned great hall was silent, except for the faint crackle of golden torches on the walls. Hundreds of alien eyes stared at Jack. Some glowed red, some green, some as pale as moonlight. The king stood at the head of the endless table, his tall figure wrapped in black robes, his crown of twisted metal shimmering faintly. Jack tightened his grip on the iron ladle. "I'm here for her," he said again, his voice louder this time. The king tilted his head, and a ripple of laughter swept through the creatures at the table, soft, cool, echoing. "And what do you plan to do, human?" the king asked. "Fight us? All? Steal our most precious prize? You do not understand what she is." Jack glanced at the woman, the child's mother, standing at the far end of the hall, still holding her tray of bread. She looked thinner now, her hands trembling, but her eyes met Jack's, wide with fear and hope. "She is not your prize," Jack said. "She's a person. She doesn't belong here." "Wrong," the king hissed, his voice like stone grinding on stone. "She is the heart of this city. Her food feeds our bodies. Her spirit feeds our souls. Without her, we starve. We fade, and we will not allow that." Jack took a step forward. "Then you'll have to stop me." At that, the king raised his hand. The hunters, silent, red-eyed creatures with long claws, began to creep closer from the edges of the room. Just then, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen behind them. The child. Jack realized what was happening. The child was causing a distraction. "Clever little thing," the king murmured, glancing over his shoulder. "But it will not help you." But Jack had already started moving. He charged toward the woman, knocking over dishes and chairs, ignoring the gasps and hisses around him. Two hunters leapt at him, but he swung the iron ladle hard, striking one in the face and ducking under the claws of the other. He grabbed a jug of hot soup from the table and threw it into the second hunter's eyes. The woman dropped her tray and reached for Jack's hand. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "Too late for that," he replied, pulling her toward the nearest door. But the king's voice boomed across the hall. "Seal the exits." The doors slammed shut, glowing red. The hunters began closing in, and the guests at the table rose to their feet, their bodies shifting into darker, more monstrous forms. Jack's heart pounded. He turned to the woman. "Is there another way out?" She nodded faintly. "Yes. But it's dangerous. Show me." She pulled him toward the back wall of the hall, where a faint crack glowed between two massive stones. She pressed her palm to it, and the stones slid apart, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling down into darkness. Jack glanced back. The hunters were almost on them. "Go!" he shouted, pushing her through first. They plunged into the darkness. The stones closed behind them, cutting off the angry roars and hisses above. For a moment, there was only silence and the sound of their own breathing. Jack lit a strange, faintly glowing fruit he had grabbed from the table, using it like a lantern. The stairway was steep and damp, the walls covered in strange markings. "Where does this lead?" he asked. To the cellars, she said, where the oldest ovens burn. No one goes there anymore. But there is a secret tunnel to the surface, if it still works. If? I've been here a long time, she said quietly. Things change. They reached the bottom of the stairs and stepped into a vast underground chamber. It was hotter here, and strange machines churned and groaned in the shadows. Massive ovens lined the walls, their fires burning with eerie green flames. Jack turned to her. We can't just run. Even if we escape, they'll follow. They'll never stop. The woman looked at him for a long moment. Then we don't just escape. We end this. How? She knelt by one of the old ovens and opened a hidden compartment, pulling out a small black box. Before they took me, she said, I was planning to destroy this place. But they caught me before I could finish. This is my last recipe. Jack frowned at the box. What is it? A seed, she said softly. It will burn the heart of the city and set me free. But someone has to plant it. Jack stared at her. You? Mean you'll die. She shook her head. No, but whoever plants it must stay behind. Jack clenched his jaw. I'll do it, he said. She looked up at him, her eyes wide. You don't even know me. Why? Because no one else will, Jack replied. Simply, and because someone has to. Before she could protest, a loud crash came from the stairway behind them. The hunters had broken through. Time's up, Jack said, taking the box from her hands. Show me where to plant it. She pointed toward the largest oven at the center of the chamber. Jack ran toward it, dodging falling stones as the hunters descended. The oven door was massive, glowing hot. Jack shoved it open, the heat scorching his skin. Inside was a swirling green fire that seemed alive, pulsing like a heartbeat. Place it in the center, she shouted. Jack climbed inside, the heat almost unbearable. He reached the center, knelt down, and pressed the black box into the flames. The fire roared to life, turning golden, then white. The entire chamber began to shake. Jack stumbled back, but the woman was already pulling him out of the oven. You didn't have to stay, he shouted over the roar of collapsing stone. Neither did you, she replied. The hunter screamed as the golden fire spread through the chamber, consuming the ovens, the walls, everything. This way, she cried, dragging him toward a small tunnel hidden behind a pile of crates. They crawled through as the chamber behind them exploded into light. After what felt like hours, they emerged into cold night air. Jack lay on his back, breathing hard, staring up at the stars. The woman knelt beside him, her hands trembling. You did it, she said softly. You actually did it. Jack turned to her and managed a faint smile. No, he said. We did. Behind them, the ground shook one last time as the alien city burned, and above, the stars seemed a little brighter, but in the shadows of the trees nearby, faint red eyes still watched. The hunters had not given up yet. HFY the night was still, but the quiet did not feel safe. Jack and the woman sat on the cold ground outside the hidden tunnel, catching their breath, while the faint orange glow of the burning alien city flickered far behind them. For the first time in what felt like hours, Jack looked around properly. They were in a dense forest. The air smelled like wet stone and ash. Tall, twisted trees loomed overhead, their black branches curling like claws. Somewhere in the distance, a faint wind carried strange, hollow howls. The woman, still clutching her apron, her hands dusted with flour and soot, stared at the ground, her shoulders heavy. We stopped it, she whispered, almost as if she didn't believe it herself. We really stopped it. Jack nodded, but his jaw was tight. We stopped the city, he said quietly. But we didn't stop them. The woman raised her eyes, and in the shadows of the trees, Faint red lights blinked into existence. First 2, then 6, then a dozen. The hunters. They stepped out from the darkness, their long limbs scraping against bark, their claws gleaming like wet glass. Even without the city's power, they moved fast, silent, but with a hunger that Jack could feel in his chest. They'll never stop, the woman murmured. They can't. As long as I'm alive, they'll keep coming. Then we keep running, Jack said. He stood and offered her his hand. Until they can't find us. She hesitated for only a second, then took his hand. The hunters hissed as they moved closer, the air growing colder around them. Jack didn't wait. He pulled the woman with him, and they ran. The forest was thick and uneven, roots and rocks grabbing. At their feet, low branches clawing at their faces. But they didn't stop. The hunters followed, fast, relentless, their red eyes weaving between the trees, getting closer. Jack's lungs burned. He could hear the woman gasping behind him, her strength fading. But still, she ran. Up ahead, she called breathlessly, pointing toward a faint glow beyond the trees. The river. They burst out of the trees and skidded to a halt at the edge of a rushing river. The water was black and cold, filled with swirling mist. Can you swim? Jack asked. Dot shook her head, already trembling. Then hold on, he said. The hunters emerged from the trees, their shapes silhouetted against the faint moonlight. They paused for only a moment, watching Jack and the woman with their burning eyes. Jack didn't give them the chance to strike. He grabbed the woman, wrapped his arm around her, and leapt into the river. The water was ice. It swallowed them instantly, pulling them down, twisting and spinning them through hidden currents. Jack clung to her with everything he had, kicking hard until his lungs screamed. Above them, the red eyes of the hunters blinked and disappeared, and the river carried them far away. When they finally crawled out onto the muddy bank, they were both shivering and coughing, but alive. Jack collapsed on the grass, staring at the unfamiliar sky. The woman rolled onto her back, closing her eyes. I can't keep running forever, she murmured. Jack sat up, his breath still ragged. Then we find somewhere they can't follow. There has to be a place. But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. The hunters were not just creatures of the city. They were something older, something bound. To her, there is one place, she said suddenly, opening her eyes. The first kitchen. What? The place where it began, she explained, her voice low and trembling. Before they took me, I cooked one last meal there. And when they ate it, the city woke. But if I cooked there again, the right way, it might undo all of this, break their hold. But the kitchen is guarded. Jack frowned. How guarded? She sat up and looked at him, and for the first time he saw the fear deep in her eyes. By the Eater of Bones, she said. The name itself seemed to make the air colder. Jack glanced back at the river, already hearing distant hissing in the trees behind him. Then we go there, he said. The woman stared at him, confused. Just like that? You'd face the Eater of Bones for me? Jack looked her in the eye. You already faced everything for them. It's time someone did the same for you. She gave a faint, tired smile. Then follow me, she said softly. They walked through the night, moving deeper into the forest, following an ancient path of flat stones. Strange, twisted statues rose out of the ground along the way, broken faces with hollow eyes. Sometimes Jack thought he saw the statues move out of the corner of his eye. Above them, the moon grew larger and redder. And still, behind them, the hunters followed. At dawn, they reached a wide clearing where the earth opened like a wound. Stairs, carved into stone, led down into blackness. And above the entrance was a faint carving, a hand holding a knife surrounded by flames. The first kitchen, the woman whispered. Jack stepped to the edge and peered down. He could feel the heat rising from below, even here. What happens if we fail? He asked quietly. The woman turned to him. And we become the next feast. From the darkness below came a faint, deep sound, like bones cracking. Jack felt it in his chest. Heavy and sharp. The woman reached for his hand. Are you ready? Jack tightened his grip on the ladle, the same iron ladle he'd carried since the kitchen. Fight, and nodded. Let's end this. And together they stepped into the dark. But just before the black swallowed them completely, Jack glanced back one last time, and in the trees beyond the clearing, dozens of red eyes glowed brighter than ever. The hunters would follow them into hell itself, and below, waiting for them in the first kitchen. The Eater of Bones was already awake. The final show downstairs were endless. Jack and the woman descended into the darkness of the first kitchen, the stone steps cold and slick underfoot. Behind them, the faint glow of the moon above grew, smaller and smaller, until it was swallowed completely. The only sound was their breathing, and the occasional crack of bones somewhere below. He knows we're coming, the woman whispered, her voice so low Jack barely heard it. Good, Jack muttered, gripping the iron ladle tight. So do I. Finally, the stairs opened into a vast cavern, and Jack stopped breathing for a moment. The first kitchen was nothing like he imagined. It was beautiful and terrible. Golden ovens, as tall as houses, lined the walls, their flames dancing white and blue. Massive stone tables stretched out into the dark, piled high with bones, human bones, animal bones, and others Jack couldn't name. Faint golden light flickered across the room, but shadows clung stubbornly to the corners, whispering. And at the center of it all was him. The Eater of Bones. He was seated on a throne of knives, his body long and gaunt, made of something between flesh and smoke. His skull was bare, his eyes empty sockets that still somehow glowed with faint, hungry light. His hands were claws, but delicate, like a craftsman's. He was carving something small and pale on his lap, and when he looked up, the whole room seemed to hold its breath. You returned, the Eater rasped, his voice like wind through a graveyard. The woman straightened her shoulders. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. To finish what I started, she said. The Eater chuckled, a dry, hollow sound that echoed. Off the walls. You cannot finish it, he said. You are it. The feast begins and ends with you. Jack stepped forward, planting himself between the woman and the throne. Then she's off the menu, he said flatly. The Eater tilted his head and studied him. You are loud? For someone so small. I've been told, Jack replied, raising the ladle. The Eater's chuckle turned into a hiss. He stood slowly, the shadows of the room gathering around him like a cloak. The ovens flared, and the piles of bones began to rattle and shift, assembling into towering figures with empty skulls and blade-like fingers. The woman grabbed Jack's arm. They'll keep coming until we light the heart, she whispered urgently. It's the only way to stop them. Then show me where. She pointed to a giant oven in the back, its door glowing faintly gold, but chained shut with black iron. Keep them busy, she said, pulling a small pouch from her apron. I'll prepare the last dish. Jack didn't hesitate. He turned to face the Eater and the bone constructs. Hey, bone boy, he called out. You want her? You're going to have to go through me. The Eater raised one skeletal hand, and the constructs lunged. Jack swung the ladle hard, shattering the first skull clean off. He ducked and rolled as another one sliced at him, its claws catching nothing but air. He grabbed a burning brand from one of the ovens and swung it like a sword, sparks flying, the flames hissing as they struck bone. Behind him, the woman knelt before the great oven, sprinkling powders and herbs into a small copper pan, her hands moving faster and faster. The smell of bread and fire began to fill the room, warm, comforting, alive. "Almost there," she murmured, her voice full of determination. But the eater was moving now, gliding toward her, his fingers stretched out, the shadows around him writhing like snakes. "She is mine." He hissed. Jack roared and threw himself at the eater, the iron ladle glowing hot in his hand. He swung it with everything he had, and for the first time the eater staggered back, hissing in pain. "You don't own her," Jack growled. "You never did." The eater raised both hands, and the ground split beneath Jack, black flames reaching up to drag him down. But before they could, the woman shouted, "Jack, now!" The oven door flung open, and she shoved the copper pan inside. The room shook violently as golden light poured from the oven, blinding and warmed out. The eater shrieked, an awful, hollow sound, and the constructs crumbled to dust. The throne of knives shattered, and the shadows peeled away from the walls. Jack stumbled back toward her as the eater fell to his knees, his bony hands clawing at the floor. "You cannot break the feast," he croaked, but the woman stood tall now, her hair whipping around her face in the golden wind. "Watch me," she said. She reached out and slammed the oven door shut. The eater screamed one last time before the light consumed him completely, and then silence. The ovens all around them went dark. The bones stopped rattling. The shadows melted away. Jack stood there, breathing hard, staring at the empty throne. "Is it over?" he asked finally. This woman turned to him slowly, and for the first time she smiled. "Yes," she said softly. "The feast is over." The golden light faded, leaving only the faint smell of bread and ash in the air. She walked to him and took his hand. "Thank you," she whispered. Jack squeezed her hand gently. "You're welcome. Now, let's get out of here." Together, they climbed the stairs back toward the surface. But as they neared the top, Jack glanced back one last time. And deep in the shadows of the kitchen, where the throne had stood, a faint glow still pulsed, slow, quiet, waiting. And he thought he heard a whisper. "The feast is never truly over." Home again. The first rays of dawn painted the sky in pale gold and pink as Jack and the woman finally stepped out of the forest. The trees behind them still whispered, and shadows still lingered between the branches, but the hunters were gone. No red eyes, no claws, just silence, heavy and strange, but peaceful in its own way. Jack's single quotes S feet ached. His hands were raw from gripping the iron ladle, and every muscle in his body screamed with exhaustion. But they'd done it. He glanced at the woman beside him. She looked different now, still tired, but standing taller, her eyes brighter. She no longer clutched her apron like a shield. She was free. For the first time, Jack realized she was still holding his hand. She hadn't let go since the first. "Kitchen, you can go home now," he said quietly, giving her a small smile. But she shook her head, staring at the road ahead. "Home," she repeated, as if testing the word on her tongue. "What's wrong?" She didn't answer at first. Then softly she said, "Don't know where home is anymore." Jack didn't know what to say. The world ahead was empty, just endless hills and sky. After everything she'd been through, how could she just go back to a quiet, normal life? He looked at her again and saw the faintest shimmer of golden light still clinging to her hands. He opened his mouth to say something, but stopped, because he heard it too. A faint sound. At first, he thought it was the wind. But no, it was coming from behind them, from the forest. A quiet laugh, soft and dry, like bones clicking together. Jack froze. His stomach sank. "You hear that?" he asked. She nodded, her face pale again. "It's not over," she whispered. Jack spun. Around, the ladle ready in his grip, but the trees were still. The shadows were just shadows. He forced himself to turn back to her. "Then we keep moving," he said firmly. "We'll find someplace they can't follow." She looked at him with tired, sad eyes. "They can always follow, because they're not just out there." She pressed a hand to her chest. "They're in here. The first kitchen burns inside me now. As long as I live, it lives too." Jack shook his head. "Then we'll find a way to put it out, together." For a moment, she stared at him, then smiled faintly. "You really are as stubborn as you smell," she murmured. Jack chuckled softly. "I'll take that as a compliment." They walked in silence for a while, following the empty road toward a quiet little town that was just visible on the horizon. The air felt lighter here, warmer. And then, from behind them, they heard footsteps. But not the hunters. Jack turned and saw the child. The same strange little boy, with glowing blue eyes and a faint smile, standing at the edge of the forest, was holding something, a small black book bound in leather. "You left me behind," the child called, walking toward them. "I thought you were safe," Jack said. The child shook his head. "Not safe. Not yet. But I found something." He handed Jack the book. "What is it?" Jack asked. "Her recipes," the child said. Simply. The woman gasped softly and took the book from Jack. She opened it, and inside were pages filled with strange, glowing symbols. "I don't understand," Jack said. The child looked at them both with solemn eyes. "The first kitchen is not just a place," he said quietly. "It's a story, and stories don't end when you want them to. They end when someone writes the last page." The woman closed the book and held it close to her chest. Jack glanced between her and the child. "What does that mean for us?" The child tilted his head, and for the first time, Jack thought he saw something ancient behind those young blue eyes. "You have one more dish to make," the child whispered. Before Jack could ask anything more, the child turned and walked back into the forest. Woman looked down at the book, her hands trembling slightly. "What dish?" Jack asked. She opened the book to the last page, blank except for 3 words written in faint gold: "The final feast." Jack felt the weight of those words sink into him. He looked at her, and she looked at him, and then she finally spoke. "It's not over," she said softly. "Not yet, but this time we write the ending our way." He nodded slowly, then held out his hand. "Then let's finish it," he said. She took his hand, closed the book, and they walked toward the town together, 2 humans carrying the secret of a city, a kitchen, and a story that still wasn't done. And in the trees behind them, just for a moment, Jack thought he saw the faint glow of a single red eye watching. And then it was gone, but the whispers remained soft and low, as if the first kitchen was still waiting. Somewhere. The end.